thank you all for being here. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for your willingness to serve and help the MBF out this grant year. We have had about 80 people volunteer, which is amazing because we know it's still kind of a wonky year. We know people have a lot on their plates, a lot of stuff still going on the home front with kids and just transitioning back to school, and everybody's juggling a lot. So it just means so much to us that you guys have taken the time out of your very busy schedules to give us your time and attention and your considerable talents to help us get through this year's grant review. I have some notes on the side, so sorry if I'm sort of glancing back and forth here to keep me on point. We have a mixture, I think, of people on the call. Some folks are brand new and have never done grant review. They might be new fellows, or they might be fellows who have been around for a while but just haven't engaged in the process yet. So welcome to our new fellows. And then I think we have quite a few of our pros on the line, folks who have done grant review for many years, but who might need a tune-up, or who might just be curious, how things are going to go this year with the remote process. So welcome to all of you. And, I might cover some basic information. So for our veteran reviewers, apologies if there's a lot of information you may already know, but bear with us and we'll get through it all together. What you are about to embark on is really critical part of us at the MBF being good stewards of the Massachusetts IOLTA funds. So as many of you probably know, the MBF is one of 3 charitable entities that is the recipient of IOLTA funds. The Mass Legal Assistance Corp gets 67%. They get the lion's share of the IOLTA income. And the Boston Bar Foundation gets 7%, and we get 26%. So the 3 charitable entities are then charged with carefully dispersing the Massachusetts IOLTA funds. And we all do it a little differently. So the Boston Bar Foundation obviously is focusing just on programs in Greater Boston. Mass Legal Assistance Corp is focusing on all of the core legal service providers across the state. So the big regional providers, so the Greater Boston Legal Services and South Coastal Counties and de novo and all the core legal service providers. And what makes the MBF unique is that we are really the one focusing on the statewide reach for IOLTA funds. So we are, we currently have 91 programs that we fund in this, have funded in this grant year, and they are, from tiny little domestic violence programs on the Cape to the big legal service providers to, medium-sized nonprofits in Western Mass that have legal service programs. So we're really kind of covering the gamut of all across the state. And we, our methodology is unique in that, we have developed over time a pretty solid understanding of the different regional needs. So we understand that, an immigration program in Boston is going to have a very different program model and very different needs than an immigration program in the Berkshires. So we sort of have a sense of the nuances of all the different regional needs and the different programmatic needs. Every community is different as far as poverty level, as far as the diversity of citizens in the region, for the resources that are already available to them. So the MBF, keeps all of these things in mind as we're looking to fairly disperse the funds across the state. We have a methodology that we use that is based on largely on regional poverty statistics. So we come up with a grant target in mind for the year. And this year, our grant target is $2.6 million. And which is about level funding from our funding last year. We're very grateful for that because, as many of you know, IOLTA income has gone down this year. IOLTA is obviously tied to interest rates. And in March of 2020, interest rates took a significant dip with the onset of the pandemic and haven't come back up. And so we were bracing for about a 50% decrease in IOLTA. And we were thankful that it was only 25%, but that's still a pretty significant decrease in funding this year. So we're heartened by the fact that it's not as bad as we all thought it would be. But we are looking at having less money this year than we did last year. But the MBF does have what we call a stabilization fund so that we can weather the fluctuations in IOLTA. We learned a lot from the downturn in the, the 2000s, 2010 to 2015 were pretty painful years at the MBF. Many of you were here and know that we had to really make some very, very difficult decisions when the funding really plummeted at that time. And so the trustees realized the need for a solid stabilization fund that would continue to help us weather these fluctuations. So we'll definitely be tapping that this year to get to the 2.6 million. And then as far as the methodology, that 2.6 million, we then look at the poverty statistics by region across the state. And there are some sort of metrics that go into it because a couple of the counties straddle different regions, but we basically come up with a methodology where we divide, multiply that 2.6 million by the poverty statistics of percentage of each region. And that's how we come up with our regional spending targets. And that can change from year to year. So it can be a little challenging because a committee, a central mass committee might have, and it's good news that their poverty, percentages went down, but it also means that their MBF funding might go down as compared to the previous year. And so if they have a program that might have come in last year, it's possible that the funding won't be there this year for it. So there are, some tricky aspects to that methodology, but long ago, I think the trustees felt like that was the most equitable and judicious way to disperse the funds throughout the state. This year we've received 93 funding applications, and let me talk a little bit about just the overall process, and then we'll get into some of the nitty gritty on the facts of the applications that have come in. So we have 93 applications that come in, and what happens is that each application gets reviewed twice, once by the regional committee and once by the subject committee. So we actually have we have 186 separate reviews going on between now and June 15th, which is our grant making day. And we do the two reviews, regional and subject, blindly, and that serves as a really great check and balance. So the regional committee reviewer is looking at a program, and then it's also being reviewed by subject matter. Those two reviewers don't know each other. They're not talking to each other necessarily. And so when we get the results back in, we can look at the side-by-side recommendations. And if they're right on target, we can feel really pretty good that that we're on track to fund where the organization needs to be. If they're wildly different, we have some work to do to sort of dig in to see where the discrepancies might be. But it's a really useful tool, I think, and it makes it a very thorough process for sure. And for our regional reviewers, part of their review will actually be an interview. There used to be site visits back when we could visit places, and these were very important, but also, one of the most wonderful parts of the process for what we hear time and again is that for the reviewers, for you all, it is wonderful to be able to be introduced to these organizations all across the state. So, pre-pandemic, you would actually go out and, see the space that the organization is operating in, meet with the key staff, hear all about their program. You might see some things in action, and then you come back, and that, really helps to inform your review. So this year, obviously, that's going to have to be done via Zoom or conference call. But still, I think you get a great, sense by talking to, obviously, the people who are actually carrying out. And it takes it off of paper and makes it real. and you can ask them all the questions that you want to ask them when you are with them face to face. So that's regional reviewers. Our subject reviewers don't do the interview because we don't want our grantees having to spend hours in interviews with the MBF, but your role is very important as a more thorough paper review, and then again as a check and balance to the regional reviewer. And then, as you'll see when you get to the committees, you look at the big picture of the subject area and how the MBF is serving the needs of whether it be immigration, housing, domestic violence, child advocacy, or alternative dispute resolution. It's helpful for us to sort of make sure we're having a great impact on all these areas by subject as well. Let's see. So once, we'll go through the step-by-step process again, but once you have done your individual review, you come back together as the committee, and those committees are in mid to late May. And this is where the rubber hits the road, really. This is where everybody sits around a table. You know, you've done your reviews. Regional reviewers mostly have 2 reviews. Subject reviewers should have about 3 reviews. Some of you have taken on an extra or have a lighter duty. But for the most part, you've done these reviews. You come to your committee meeting, and there's one of the MBF trustees chairs each committee. We have 12 committees that we've set up, and all of you should have received information about the you know, the date and time of your committee. And we'll talk about that a little bit later, about confirming that. And so you come, and that's where the real work, you roll up your sleeves, you bring your reviews, you make your, everybody sort of goes around the table, you make your recommendations. And then the chair typically says, well, that's all great, but we have about, you know, $200,000 less in what everybody thinks we should be funding. So let's get to work. And it really is sort of, you know, a give and take of, you have to balance what the needs are of the organization, what the needs are of the region or the subject matter, and you know, what the MBF's larger grant priorities are. And it can be painful. It can be a very difficult process. There are some organizations that aren't going to get what they asked for. Many aren't going to get what they have requested. Some might get a little less than they got last year. Some may get no funding at all. So it can be, you know, a really emotional and difficult process because these organizations, let's face it, they're all doing wonderful work. They're all out in the field. They are making huge impacts for low-income clients. They're all worthy, deserving of support. It's just a matter of, you know, not having enough to go around and having to really stick to our highest priorities. I think Allie was actually going to put in the chat, if she hasn't already, there is a link to the MBF's grant priorities. It's all on our website and easy to find, but Allie also, I think, just put a link to the PDF in chat. And so that's something we didn't send out in the materials, but we did note that it's really important before you even start, you know, reading your applications. It might be good to just take a quick look at the grant priorities, because that'll give you a sense of how the decision making gets done. So as you can see, this is, you know, a pretty arduous process, and we do have 21 really engaged and wonderful active trustees, and we have 2 enthusiastic staff people, but you know, we just couldn't do it without all of you. It's just the volume of the work and the importance of the work. We really want to make sure that every application is reviewed very carefully and very thoughtfully. All of your expertise as attorneys comes into bear. So, you know, you guys will really have a good understanding of what the objectives of these organizations are, know the legal system, know the court systems within which they might be working. So your assessments are really key to the work that we are doing here and our goals. So thank you again. So this year, obviously, again, fully remote, but luckily, so last year we didn't even do the meeting. So we got blindsided last year by the pandemic, and Allie and I were kind of gearing up for grant making, and then had to, we were sort of deer in the headlights for a little while trying to figure out how this would all go. And the board of trustees ultimately, because we sort of lost a month, decided that the committees just weren't really, it's 12 committees. It does take a lot of administrative work to make them all happen. And so last year we had to pull the plug on the committees, which I know was a disappointment to a lot of folks. So we're very happy this year. We're, a little more prepared. So we are really happy to have those committees meeting, albeit in little boxes, but at least meeting together. So, so I think, we're more or less this year going to be doing, our typical review, but for the remote work. So we are grateful, and we are really hoping that this will be the last time we have to handle this remotely. And next year we will all be back together and be in committees together. And we're, the other overlay of the pandemic. So of course it's impacting our grant review, but it's certainly also impacting our grantees. So as you are doing your assessments, luckily this year at least, so last year when applicants had submitted their IOLTA applications in March, they had written them all pre-pandemic. So, the applications had absolutely no consideration for remote work or, adjusting their program models. And so the reviewers, and many of you had to do, is to take an application that came in pre-pandemic and then sort of find out what was really going on and how this was really going to happen and report back. And a lot of our grantees, some of them could pivot on a dime, but some of them were really, significantly impacted. In particular, our court-connected programs. If the courts are closed, you're not, in there providing mediation or lawyer for the day services. Or so there are lots of organizations that had some hiccups along the way. So we are grateful this year, at least all the applications came in, fully cognizant of the issues of the pandemic, and most of them are predicting. So these grants won't start until September 1st, and they'll run through August 31st. So most of the applicants, are predicting, are hopeful for a return to some more in-person activities, but they all have a plan B, which is great. They've all been operating remotely. Every single one of our grantees has continued with their work, so nobody had to shutter or close, which is wonderful. Many of our grantees were heroic frontline workers. These are folks who, were seeing clients in the most, the hardest hit communities, trying to help them access even basic services and employment and, all the benefits that they needed right in the beginning, just for, food, housing, basic needs. And then, have just continued to do heroic work, all along. And so you'll see that reflected in the application. So this year, there's going to be some necessary sort of discernment of what the impacts of the pandemic have been on the organization, what they expect they might continue to be. Some of our housing programs, for instance, are up to their eyeballs in housing matters. And once the moratorium lifts the federal side, they're likely to see a big increase in in the demand. Likewise, some of the court-connected programs that everything has been put on hold, now that when court cases or courts are now open and resumed, their matters are going to be backlogged. So there's gonna have to be a good sort of analysis of the impacts of the pandemic. And each of you have received a review guide, which used to be called our pink sheet for our veterans. They always used to be pink, but we haven't figured out how to make an electronic form pink and readable and copyable. But our review guide walks you through all those questions that you'll want to consider. And so, you've got we'll go through each of the components of the review in a bit, but You don't have to remember all the stuff I'm saying. The review guide will prompt you to ask those questions specific to the pandemic, for instance. But really, you know, in particular this year, that's why your reviews are going to be very meaningful and important. The other thing we have been saying to reviewers all year is, don't worry, we'll be flexible. You know, we understand, we got you. We understand that this is a very unusual time where, again, the goals that were set in last year's applications were completely kind of blown out of the water. You're going to be seeing some strange numbers in the reports that you're reviewing. So each of your applications will have the application for this year, but you'll also see some reporting if they're current grantees on the current grant cycle and last year's grant cycle, just to get a full sense of the picture of how the organization and the program is running. But what you might see this year is that, wow, their numbers are really, you know, a lot lower than last year, the case numbers. And so expect to see that, you know, in years past, pre-pandemic, that might be a red flag for a reviewer to say, wow, this, you know, maybe the demand isn't there. Maybe they don't really need all the funding that we're giving them. But this year, expect to see that the numbers are going to be off. Some are going to be higher, as you'll see. Quite a few organizations had to kick into even higher gear, but some of them are going to be lower. And we are cautioning people to, you know, not necessarily make that part of your funding calculus. You know, if there are other reasons you feel like they are not in need of the same level of funding, that's important to know. And you can certainly note that their numbers went down in the review, but we have sort of assured grantees that we're not going to ding them for underperformance in this crazy year, obviously. You know, I think the overall theme is that we all have to roll with some ambiguity here and some uncertainty this year, probably less so than last year, which is good. At least we're getting there. But I think some flexibility and sort of rolling with a little bit of you know, just being open-minded about, you know, all the global overlay of what we've all been experiencing in this past year. So I want to just turn to some fun facts about this year's applicants, just to give you a good sense of what you'll be looking at overall. We have received 93 applications from 61 different organizations. We have quite a few organizations that have multiple applications. And you'll see in a moment, well, so I'll get to that right now. So 87 are current grantees who are seeking repeat funding. So most of our grantees are organizations that we have funded for a long time and who have been in the MBF grant portfolio for quite a while. So they are, we have a good history with them, and you'll see that in each of the applications. 6 of the proposals are brand new projects, so those are going to take some special discernment as well. And certainly reach out if anybody has a new proposal, reach out about, you know, reach out to staff, and we can have a call or a Zoom and kind of walk you through any aspects of the new proposal. 3 of the proposals are consolidations. And so this is what I wanted to speak to about the multiple applications at organizations. So the MBF trustees are looking at efficiencies. This pandemic has helped us all sort of look at where we can all create efficiencies. And we've done that a lot in our remote grant making with PDFs instead of mail, and you know, looking for ways to make things more efficient for you and for the organization and for the grantees. And one of the things they are looking at is whether it's possible to consolidate some of these multiple programs at individual organizations. So we're doing a few tests this year, just 3 actually. MLRI, Mass Law Reform Institute, has provided a consolidated application for what would have been 3 separate programs. And Community Legal Aid has consolidated 4 of their programs into 2. So a couple of you may get these consolidated proposals, and we will probably reach out to you about them, but also feel free to reach out to us because they might just take a little more nuance to review. We got about $3.2 million in requests. And as I mentioned earlier, we expect to fund about 2.6 million. So you can see already we have a $600,000 shortfall in what's been requested and what we're able to fund. And our seasoned reviewers will tell you that that's the hardest part of this whole thing. Again, some difficult decisions need to be made at the committee level. We never have enough money to fund programs every year. So this is a perennial thing that reviewers and the committees have to deal with. We wish we could fund them all. As I said earlier, they're all meritorious programs. They're all doing wonderful things, but we just, obviously have a discrete amount of money that we can work with. And so that's where the priorities really come into play. So as you're assessing your applications, really keeping in mind what our main priorities, direct representation to low income clients, is sort of the ultimate. And then we have, sort of different range of priorities within that heading under civil legal services. And then we also have a priority for administration of justice projects. Things are going to take pressure off the dockets. So we generally fund about 80% civil legal services and about 20% administration of justice projects, but both are MBF priorities. And with that, I will walk you through the step-by-step review process, and then we will get to some questions and answers. And this is, again, in all the review materials. We sent around a review instruction sheet with your assignments, so don't need to take notes here. But step one is confirming your participation. So if I know I've heard from many of you, but if we have not yet heard from you, please, if you could do it today or tomorrow, let us know that you received the email from either me or Allie that has your assignments. Confirm that you can open them, because we're a little nervous, doing this all electronically. We want to make sure everybody can access the materials. And some of them, we've sent you their applications, their audits, some of their file sizes can be pretty big. So make sure you can open them and read them. And then confirm that you don't have any conflicts, any conflicts of interest with any of the assignments that we've given you. Most of you noted your conflicts. We can sometimes miss a few when it's like a giant Rubik's Cube when we're putting all, 186 reviews and 80 volunteers and trying to kind of match preferences and geography. And so we do miss a few things. So if there's anything that presents a conflict, please let us know that as soon as possible. And step two is orientation. So you nailed that. You're ahead of the game. Step three is scheduling your interview if you are a regional reviewer. So subject reviewers don't need to schedule these interviews, but if you are a regional reviewer, we recommend you schedule the appointment as soon as you can, because sometimes it can take, a week or two to get something on the calendar. And the best person to reach out to is the grant contact that's listed on the very first page of the application summary. So that person is generally the person you're going to meet with, although sometimes they will just connect you to the person who might be the lead attorney on the program or somebody who's more appropriate to talk with. But that's the person you'll want to reach out with. If you have any issues reaching out with anybody, please let Allie or me know, and we can help to intervene and make the connections. Step three is reviewing all the application materials. So we know we sent you a lot, and it's a lot to get through. But it is important, obviously, to do your best to read through all the materials. The audits are really for reference. So if you look at their budget, or if you look at the program budget, or if you have a question about any of the financial data that they've provided, then you might refer to their audit or their tax return. So don't feel like you have to read that with a fine tooth comb unless you feel there are any red flags or anything that you need to know. And, generally as you're reading through, maybe jot down some notes, questions that pop up or things that you're curious about. Some of those may be things you want to ask Allie or me ahead of time before you go further or do your review. Some are just things that you'll want to ask if you are doing an interview with the applicant. And again, you can use that application review form that we included in your materials as a guidepost. So it'll have, questions. Is the program aligned with MBF's priorities? Are they addressing an unmet need? Is the program staffed appropriately? Are they, collaborating, or are they duplicating any other services, and that kind of thing. So it'll walk, that review sheet will walk you through all those important questions. And we did try to mix it up a little bit this year as far as applications that we assigned. We know last year, if you reviewed last year, we actually pretty much assigned the same applications that people reviewed the previous year, just because we thought it was such a wonky year. We wanted to keep it simple and keep it simple for the grantees. But this year we did try to shuffle it up just for interest. So hopefully you've gotten something that you haven't reviewed in the last year or two. And in each PDF that we sent you, you'll find the very first page as a summary, and then it gives you a whole grant history of MBF grant funding. If it is one of these programs that's one of multiple programs at an organization, unfortunately, our forms put them all together. We don't have a way to tease them out. So you'll just have to sort of look for your project amongst the list of different programs funded. But at least it'll give you sort of a sense of how long has this organization been funded by the MBF, what's been the funding, increments throughout the years. Then you'll find a proposal summary submitted by the grantee and their budget form. So how are they what are they asking for, and how are they going to use the money? Then a proposal narrative, which goes into great detail about that. And then the organization's overall budget, some information about their board members, a couple of letters of reference. Each applicant has at least 2 letters of reference, their IRS determination letter, and then we did put the audit in there. And then we do put some current or previous reporting materials in there. So if they are a current grantee, you'll get a mid-year report on this current grant year. So it's a little confusing because the MBF, we're straddling 3 grant years at all times. So we're looking at, the folks we are hoping to be funding for next year. We're in a current grant year, and then we have reporting from last year. So you'll find the mid-year report for the current grant cycle. And for our seasoned reviewers, we did just revamp that form. So it will look a little different. We simplified the mid-year to make it, we call it the mid-year update now. It's just a sort of checkoff form with some space for commentary, but it's not the voluminous. Previously, the mid-year and the final report were pretty much identical, and it was a lot to wade through. So we're trying to simplify for you and for the grantees and for us. So that form might look a little unfamiliar, but you'll see it in there. And then you'll get a final report summary from last year. That's just a 1-pager that we've summarized for you. And then if you have additional questions, we've also provided the full final report so you can dig in to any additional detail. Step 5, if you're a regional reviewer, is to conduct your interview, obviously. So to, just have a great conversation with the applicants. It's a tricky role that you play because, of course, they're all doing wonderful things. You're all friendly people. You want to be encouraging and tell them how wonderful their program is, but we have to be a little careful not to be too encouraging because we just don't know what the end result is going to be. So you've got to maybe put a little bit of a poker face on, or, we'll talk a little bit about how it's important not to be an advocate for the program. Your role is really to be a objective, discerning reviewer on behalf of the MBF, even though these are all amazing, wonderful programs. And you want to, leave the meeting, having them feel good and you feel good, but it's important to kind of, just sort of keep it, sort of professional and businesslike, and just not be too encouraging or give them the impression that, it's in the bag, they're going to be fully funded. So that's tricky. It's not an easy role to play. We have a rating guide that we've provided you. It's a little subjective, and we want you to know it's not, we don't take the rating and then apply that to a funding methodology. So it's really just sort of an additional tool for the MBF trustees to kind of have a sense, 1 is a, home run project, 2 is a good solid project, 3 might be, a good project, but might not be, not be something we want to fund this year for whatever reason. But we also have had 2s and 3s that have gotten funding. So don't worry too much about the rating guide. It is just it's sort of a tool that we use just to be able to have a very quick understanding of sort of the different levels of projects that we're looking at. When you're reviewing, also, of course, keep in mind that we have that $600,000 shortfall. So again, we have to be very careful about the funding recommendations that are being made. It is okay to recommend additional funding. If you have a program that is looking for 10,000 more, and you really feel strongly that they need the 10,000 more, they have demonstrated that it will be put to good use, and that's fine to recommend that, or to recommend a brand new program that we haven't funded before. But you have to keep in mind that money's got to come from somewhere. So if the region budget is tight, if you recommend that, it's and it's got to come from another program. So those are the things you have to keep in mind as you're making the decisions. And as far as the review process, the only other thing we want to let you know is that, so you'll bring your review sheets to the May meeting, because you'll use that as the basis for your discussion, but those all have to come back to staff. And if you could do that by June 1st at the very latest, we would appreciate it, because Allie and I then have to take all of that information and massage it into a format for the trustees to be able to review on grant making day, which is June 15th. So what happens after your work is done? You've reviewed your organizations, you've done your interviews if you're regional, you've done your paper review if you're subject, you've had your committees, you guys have hammered it out, you've massaged it into the funding target, and your work is done. Then that information gets put into a database and gets shared with all of the trustees. And then the trustees, each of your committees will have a trustee chair. When we come together for grant making day on June 15th, which is a full day affair, each of the chairs will report on their committee findings. So it'll just go one by one through all of the regions, and the regional chair will present the findings of the committee. The subject chairs will chime in along the way as needed, and concur or let them know where there's might be a disparity in the funding recommendation. And then at the end of that process, everything gets voted literally one by one. So it's quite a process, quite an arduous process. But the work that you're doing will enable it to go very smoothly. There, are occasions that the trustee recommendation for funding is going to be different from what you recommended, and that's because when it all comes together in the big picture, there might have to be some some adjustments and other considerations made. So again, that's why we do caution to be very careful when you're talking with your grantees about what kind of ultimate funding amount they can expect. A few notes before we get to question and answer. Assume we don't have any indication that IOLTA is going back up anytime soon. So assume that numbers are going to stay flat. And that means, again, being cautious about building capacity that we might not be able to support in the coming years. So just, keep that in the back of your mind. Again, try to remain impartial and not become an advocate, even though we know that's very hard. But try to sort of keep your MBF grant reviewer hat on. Keeping in mind the broader demand and reality of funding constraints. We're not typically a main funder of any of our organizations. There might be just a few of the smaller organizations, but for the most part, our average grant is about $26,000, I think. So, the MBF's role as a funder is never as a primary funder, and we are looking to support and perhaps help organizations leverage other funding coming in, or sort of being part of the funding funding puzzle. So keep that in mind. And let's see, I think that is keeping the process confidential is also the last thing I'll leave you with. So please don't discuss the reviews with colleagues or funding recommendations. Again, because nothing will be final until June 15th. Actually, until grantees don't even get notified until typically late June or early July. We will circle back with all of you and let you know what the ultimate funding amounts were, so you can kind of cross-reference. So we will get that information back to you, but please, in the meantime, keep that information confidential. And then just finally, Allie and I are here to support you in whatever way you need. Each of you, when you received your email, you either received it from Allie or from myself. There's 12 committees, and we just split them 6 and 6. So whoever you received your email from is going to be your main point of contact as far as MBF staff. But we can also both, if you can't get me, feel free to go to Allie, and vice versa. We wear many hats here at the MBF. So Allie and I both are well-versed in the grant making as well as the fundraising. And so feel free to reach out to either one of us. We are here to help you in any way that we can throughout this process. I think that's it. Were there some questions that came in?
We had a few questions. Ben had asked about steps 6 and 7 in the regional review process. Ben, I don't know if you want to unmute yourself and elaborate on
Sure.
that.
Thank you, Allie. So when we're working on the application review form, I'm just, my question is about the timing here. So I've been assigned to meetings that are on May 19th. So when I finish that application, am I just sending it to the person who's chairing that meeting on May 19th?
No, so your review sheet, hold on to it, bring it to the meeting, and you can send it to, we would love to get them as early as possible. So when you're done with it, you can send it anytime to whichever staff person is assigned to your committee. But hold on to that, bring it to the meeting. And the chair doesn't need to see the review sheets. What we do is, we'll summarize them for the trustees for grant making day. Is that right, Allie? Am I right about that? Yeah.
Yes.
So just fill out your form as you go along. We expect some people, might have a tight timeline. And so maybe get it done right before the meeting, bring it to the meeting, do your review, and then either make a, if it's not PDF or Word form, just email it over to Allie or me.
So for those who haven't been in a meeting before, you're going to present on your applications. So that's why those review forms are helpful. So you can use that to kind of say, what you concluded from either your interview or your paper review.
So when it has in step 7, the deadline of June 1st, is that just kind of an overall later deadline? Or
yes, yeah.
So, okay.
That's a little ambiguous. Sorry about that.
All right.
So we noticed the wording was a little ambiguous. So complete your form before the review meeting, so you have it ready to present. But Allie and I need to get a copy of it by June 1st. So you've
Okay.
got a little time, get it to us whenever you can, but the last deadline would be June 1st, because we've got to get the stuff into some kind of form for the trustees.
Okay, so it's not like we have that committee meeting and then we go back and we edit it or something
Nope.
for June 1st.
Nope.
Okay,
Yeah, no.
all right.
You can-
Very
so
good.
you can send it as soon as you're done with it, you can email it to us. That would be great.
All right, sounds good. Thank
But
you.
no later than June 1st. And a note about that review form. Last year, we did have some trouble with the review form because we did them in both a Word and a PDF form. We did the form fillable, which we thought would be so great, but it turned out the more you typed in the field, the smaller the font got, and then some people couldn't even open it at all. And so it was kind of a disaster. So this year, we're trying something new that looks like it's going to work very well. It's a Word format, but with some fillable fields. So it looks like you have sort of unlimited ability to type in. It just will move the form a little further down, but that's fine by us. It doesn't have to be kept in a certain number of pages or anything. So we hope that it will be easy, but we know technology doesn't always go along with our plan. So if anybody has any issues at all, reach out to us and we'll figure it out. You can also always, print it out, handwrite it, and, just scan it and email it to us. So however it works best for you. We've tried it, we've tested it out and it looks like it's going to be, looks like it's a great tool. We were surprised that we'd never really seen too many Word form filled forms before, but we're hoping that it will work well. But let us know if you have any issues.
Another question in the chat, do you think it's helpful to access the grant review from last year?
You can reach out to us. We don't do that as a general rule because we want this to be a fresh set of eyes. But if you're feeling like you need a sort of a reality check or a cross-reference, reach out to us and we can provide you with that information. But I think in general, we like you to just have a sort of fresh start, have the organization have a fresh start.
Are grantee applicants aware of the $600,000 shortfall?
They are. So all of our grantees were actually all year long, we've been, telling them the sky is falling and, we're going to have 50% less in IOLTA funding. And so they are all very well aware. And a lot, most of our grantees also get funding from MLAC and or the BBF. So they're very tuned in to IOLTA. And so they are aware. And, it was surprising. Despite that, we did get quite a few applications requesting significantly increased awards. But none of them would be surprised to know that we didn't have the funds available.
Those are all the questions in the chat, but if anybody else has a question, feel free to unmute yourself.
I see Brian.
Yeah, to follow up on Ben's question, last year, obviously, we didn't have the committees, and I just want to make sure I'm clear with respect to the funding recommendation, because I think I've heard it referred to sort of as horse trading in the past. So if after undertaking the review, the interview with the applicant, and I determine subjectively, I think it's worth 100% or 95%. And that's what I put down in my review form. And then I have the meeting with the committee, and the committee collectively says, oh, geez, 95% isn't going to do it. You're going to have to go to 80 or 75. I think what I heard is I don't change my form still. I just want to make sure I'm clear on how that works.
Yep, that's correct. Just leave your form the way it is. We'll have the results from each committee. So it's useful to know, hey, Brian, really in our perfect world would have given them X amount, but because of the committee constraints, we had to whittle it down. So it's valuable to know what your subjective review is. So don't change.
So the chairperson of that committee will be able to make some adjustment or recommendation after the fact?
Correct. So each of these committees, Ally and I will be at each of these committees. So we will be sort of tracking. We have a whole spreadsheet. We track everything. And at the end of the committee, we leave there with a tracker that has the actual awards. And we also will have your review sheets. We'll have that, we'll also go into our database of what you actually recommended. So all that information is there.
Okay, got it. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. The other
Along-
thing, oh, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
The other thing I just wanted to mention is that in years past, each of the committee members would have received a book which has a summary of every application in the committee, and you will again have access to that. We will do those online. We haven't made them yet, but each of you will be given a link and a password to to all of the applications under review in your committee. So in advance of the committee, you can, you don't have to fine tooth comb read them all, but you can have a sense of what applications are being considered in the committee and what the competition is, I guess.
Along the lines of Brian's question, another one was, in prior years, we reviewed others' evaluations and the requests were prioritized during the meeting. Are the committees different this year?
Say that again. In other years.
In prior
Oh, yeah.
years, we reviewed others' evaluations, so the other members
Oh,
of
yeah.
the committee,
Yeah.
and the requests were prioritized during the meetings. Are the committees different this year? So no, they are
Yeah.
not different. They
No,
are the
they're not
same.
different. Yeah, so that's exactly how it'll go. Sorry, brain is not functioning. Yeah, so that's exactly how it will go. So everybody, basically the chairperson will go around the room and everybody will have a chance very briefly, because we don't want these meetings, we try to keep them within a 2-hour time block, briefly talk about the program, give your assessment and give your funding recommendation. Then it'll just go to the next person, it'll go all the way around. And then the conversation begins, about sort of back and forth and, where the greatest needs are. So yes, it will be exactly the same.
Ron, I think you're muted.
In prior years, my memory is that we were asked to review all of the other applications for the committee meeting before the meeting. Is that right?
Yeah, so I just mentioned what we're going to do is provide an online review book, and we hope to have it ready to go early next week. And so you will have a chance to review all of the applications, to the extent you like. You could read every single one full through, or you can kind of skim them all to get a sense. But we will have, each committee will have a review book of all the applications within their committee.
All right, thank
And you'll get a link and a passcode to those hopefully early next week.
all right, thanks.
You're welcome.
Another question, will each region know the total amount allocated to the region?
Yes, so once you get to the committee, the chair will let you know. I don't know that we've done that ahead of time, Allie. I don't think we did. This is only my second grant review being here, but I think what happens is the chair, we make these score sheets. It has the region target amount, and the chair has that number. And then the committees do the reporting, and then you work to hit that target. So you'll have it at the meeting. I don't think we've ever provided it ahead of the meeting, but some of our veteran reviewers might know better than I do. Any
Those are
other
questions in the chat?
Any other questions? Know that, again, Allie and I are an email away. We're happy to email with you, talk with you by phone, Zoom with you to review any aspects of applications that you have any questions or concerns about. And please reach out at any time. And if there aren't any other questions, I will just close by saying oh, wait, Zach.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Great question. You mentioned that there's a difference between interview reviewers and subject reviewers. How do I know which is which, or which
Oh.
I am?
So can tell you, your application material should have said whether you're a regional or a subject. Allie, do you know? Oh, you're regional, Zach.
Okay.
You're
So
Greater Boston too. Yeah.
okay. All right.
So
all right.
you are
So
regional. So your
set up
review
a meeting.
Yes, exactly.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
And actually, we did make a little error in the emails we sent out, just so you're not confused. So each of your emails had the application, it had a review instruction sheet, it had the ratings guide and the review sheet. But the review, one of the subject reviewers, I think it might have said regional review instructions. So sorry if we confused anybody with that. That's maybe why you were confused, Zach.
Thank you.
We got most of it right. This is kind of the time at the MBF where Allie and I are just, a little, our heads are spinning a little bit because it's quite a bit of information to kind of process and keep moving. So we are glad to have it to this point. We put it in your capable hands, and we really look forward to talking with you all throughout in the next couple of weeks. You will see one of us at your review meetings, and you'll see the chairs. And again, lines of communication are open, so reach out anytime. And we hope you enjoy the process. A lot of our reviewers and fellows find this is their favorite part of the grant cycle, because certainly getting out to learn more about these amazing organizations is a wonderful learning experience, but then also getting together in the committees. You're going to be meeting people that you may not have had an opportunity to meet otherwise, from different subject matters than you might practice, or different geographical regions, or bench bar. So it's just a nice way to sort of expand your network and get to know folks who are like-minded in their altruism and philanthropic work in helping out the MBF. So enjoy and have fun with it, and let us know how we can help you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, have a great day.